panel, I think it is, before we enter this debate, it's important to actually understand what terrorist organizations centrally want. Coming from PM, we have no idea what these terrorist organizations actually want, what their objectives are, and what is their long-run plan in the grand scheme of things. I'm going to do three things in my speech. Firstly, I'm going to tell you why territory is not just one of the objectives, but the central objective for all, if not most, of terrorist organizations. Secondly, what are the benefits that come from having territory? And thirdly, what happens even if we fail to hold on to that territory? So firstly, onto the objectives of the terrorist groups and why territory is a central objective to these terrorist groups. Using from every single terrorist organization, right, has territory as a central claim to its manifesto. We look at terrorist groups like ISIS, who wants to establish an Islamic caliphate. We look at things like Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam, who want to establish a Tamil state for themselves. The Chechen rebels that wanted to establish a state in Ukraine. The Taliban that control large parts of Afghanistan until now still has this huge advantage because they have territory. Territory has been a central cause to every single terrorist group because of the economic reasons, the economic, political, and ideological reasons that they need to have these territories. Like, it's very dismissive of Prime Minister to say that that eventually, yes, territory may be one of your causes, but then we should not focus on this right now because territory is something that maybe later you can get it, when actually territory is the one and central cause for all terrorist organizations. What are the benefits that we obtain when we have territory? So, like, in terms of like benefits, right? There are three major benefits that come out from having this come out for territory. Firstly, right, is purely economic reasons. Joel talked to you about how there is not enough, that it's a zero-sum game, that we only have a certain limited amount of capital. That is precisely the reason why it is necessary to increase your economic gains. And how do you increase your economic gains? You can only increase your economic gains through actually having a stable territory where you can tax the residents. You can exploit the resources of that territory to actually take it. Because this debate does not happen for terrorist groups that don't have the possibility of collecting territory, right? This debate happens in countries where there are large pieces of territory available for these terrorist groups that they can go in, they can tax the people, they can take the resources of these people. We think that it's very important for a terrorist group to begin in terms of strategicness, to ensure that it has a huge amount of economic resources that it can land on to actually carry out whatever terror you talked about. If you want to, because then when you have more and more economic resources, right, that's when you can actually carry out more and more of what you're talking about. But it all starts with territory. It all starts with initially establishing your main territory, your main support of your main base of economic resources. Secondly, right, we need territory because to form strategic bases, right, we need territory to actually have places to train your workers, to train your recruits, to train the people you want to fight for, who want to fight. You need territory for people to actually like come to people who move to Syria to actually go there for training. You need places to store your weapons. These are all strategic reasons as to why the territory is completely necessary for you to actually have something. Third thing, and most importantly, right, is that territory gives you the credibility that terrorist organizations without territory does not. When we are comparing to, like, very simple analogy, right? I look at a terrorist group like ISIS, and previously you look at Al-Qaeda and see why ISIS had such a much bigger impact on the world, it put the world in so much more terror as compared to Al-Qaeda. The reason was because people actually realized that ISIS is doing something, that it's possible for ISIS to actually go into this, to do things like have this state, that actually what they're fighting for, right, the main central goal, right, which was territory, and is the main central goal, as I've already said, for almost all terrorist groups, it's actually possible for them to actually go into this. And what happens then? You actually get two major benefits that flow from this, right? First thing is that you get more recruits in terms of people realize you're not just some kucing kurap like terrorist group. You're not just some like saying, okay, I want to blow this up, I'm not some anonymous network doing this kind of random shit, right? And people actually see, yo, these guys are actually like building a caliphate. This is something we want to be part of. This is something we want to give our lives to. This is something greater than us. This is something, and it all boils down to the symbolic or the credibility you gain from having territory, from having these things. Secondly, what happens other than recruits? You also get huge numbers of donations. You get donations from people who are willing to give up because they realize, they realize that you are actually something that's centralized rather as opposed to decentralized, right? When you are centralized, people see that a proper organizational structure that comes with territory. Like, yes, I'll take closing. Yeah.
Okay, so it is insufficient for you to point to the fact this has been what terrorist organizations want and simply say therefore they continue. Rather, why is it that it is not the spread of terror in order to coerce governments into giving in to their demands and not just territory that these terrorist organizations could want?
Okay, taking you at your best, right? Let's say that terrorist organizations, right, don't want any territory at all. but they still want to, and they want only to create random acts of terror. They want to create terror in the world. They want to create terror for no apparent reason, for just to make people like feel sad, right? What they need then, right? But how are they going to achieve this, right? Without the benefits of having territory that we talked about, without the benefits of the enhanced credibility, without the benefits of the economic benefits, without the benefits of actually having. Yes.
Yeah. So what's credible about ISIS? How is ISIS more credible after losing more territory?
Oh, yeah, okay, so, perfect. I'm going on to that. So thirdly, right, even if what happens if the territory is compromised, right? So firstly, on the first level, right, you don't lose anything. It's super simple for you to just revert to your original strategy on their side and start attacking people and do this kind of thing. But at a second level, right, higher, you now have the added benefits, right, of people knowing that at one point you managed to claim this large amount of territory, and even though you were attacked and shrunken down, right, that you are not just that this cause of fighting for this terrorist group, right, is something that is worth fighting for. This cause is something that is possible, is something this terrorist group is doing something that's noble, this terrorist group is creating something that is actually doable. And that is so important, ladies and gentlemen, because that the mindset of people when they want to join a terrorist group or not join a terrorist group, right, is also about the idea of the possibility. People want to create a meaning that's greater than themselves. They want the idea or the possibility of a success. And when you have territory, that is a symbolic of a concrete success. It's as concrete as you can get. Like that idea of success, right, drives your recruitment, drives your donations, and it gives you and even then, right, like an added benefit to this, right, is that if you've been attacked and your territory shrinks, right, you're now able to flip the narrative. You're able to say like, yes, actually now look, we had this control. We, like, for example, like let's say Hamas, when they had Palestine, right, and Israel starts sending in like missiles and stuff, right, you're able to flip the narrative and say, hey, yeah, like look, this is what the West is doing to us. This is what they are doing to us. That they're attacking us. That we need to fight for our people. We need to fight for our land. It is possible. It should be done, and it can be done. Very proud to oppose.
Thank you very much, Leader of Opposition. Can we please have the Deputy Prime Minister here?
This suggestion that all terrorist organizations have had territory as a core end goal in our manifestos, therefore we should prioritize it, makes no sense because, dude, we are the terrorist organization. We are saying territory shouldn't be a short-term end goal, but a long-term one where we are more ambitious than just one town or one village, and we look at larger spaces. We think you have to prove that it being a short-term goal is more advantageous than what we claim is. We're going to do two things in this speech. One, we're going to talk about why this will affect the West's reaction to us more, and why making it unpredictable and uncertain for them means that their solidified response to us is going to be significantly weaker. But two, we're going to talk about why it then ensures better end goals for our purposes as an organization. Before that, two things. One, what is caliphate? Their claim is that caliphate starts with specific land in some towns where we have control over it. The caliphate is the creation of a world that runs based on your ideology or morality. The ambitious or the long-term end goal is that you eventually hopefully want to convert the whole world to your cause. It's not about a specific land or a specific area that you call yours, but one where you convert as many people in society across the world to it. There are two possibilities that you can achieve. One, you can start with one town and constantly fight the boundaries of this town, constantly fight the landlocked barriers and battles in military outcomes because people will constantly try and challenge this one town, where you run, whether you win or lose changes on a daily basis based on the military outcomes of that day. Or two, you can influence minds around the world where you have insidious transnational radicalization, play the long game, convince more people down the line so that you can coerce governments and peoples across the world to give you what you need. We think in this circumstance, you create the caliphate significantly better on our side when you play the long game instead of playing the short game where you fight the military battle on a daily basis and you're unsure whether you're going to win it today or tomorrow. We think if you want to create a caliphate, even if that is an end goal, we create a caliphate better on our side. But we don't think that the caliphate is the only outcome that any terrorist organization wants. It's unclear why the only aim we should ever have is territory. We think that oftentimes the impact that we want is our ideology to spread. It's an attempt to add vengeance against the West, vengeance for all of the harm that they have caused upon us. If we want to cause the most amount of damage to the West, and we want to cause the most amount of chaos and death there, the way to do it isn't to have a physical space where they come to us and attack us here, but to make sure that we can go to them, be unpredictable, be uncertain, and be at a point where they can no longer predict what we are doing because we don't have to be connected to one specific land. Let's look at this concept of pillaging resources, right? Because the argument from Justin is that if you have territory, you have economic resources that you can claim and you can use. Look, you only need weapons and a military training program and a space where you can commit all of these harms if you have a land to protect, if you have something that you have to govern and control. Under our paradigm, if you don't have physical territory that you have to protect, you are insidious, you're all over the place, you don't need your military training program, you don't need your large amount of weapons, you don't need your large donations as much, because you, for instance, if you're using the internet or you're using the deep web or you're using other resources, the amount of resources and the amount of economic so-called credibility that you need is significantly less anyway, so we don't think that you need to do that. But two, we think the amount of resources that you spend protecting and governing that territory while pillaging it is just a complete waste of capital, right? If you can claim all of these donations and you can claim all of these things on your side, you now have to spend it on protecting some of these people and ensuring that you give them food or water or any of these things. We think the cost of governing these territories is just a complete waste of resources on that side. But then there's this issue of credibility. It's this really tenuous link, right? That somehow because I have land, I am more noble. Because I have a space, I have more credibility. I'm sorry, there's no reason why because I have a physical space, I'm automatically more credible in anyone's eyes. In fact, one of the largest things about the ISIS today is the fact that they have no credibility in Iraq or Syria because they're losing that battle. But the battle that they are winning is the ones where the random lone wolf person drives a truck into the public or in any other specific places in the West. We think they have far more credibility in their cause when they're unpredictable than when they have a specific land on their side. The claim that even if you failed, you tried is a good part of credibility makes no sense, right? If you have failed in your landlocked space, that is the end of your credibility because you have tied your credibility to that land. We think on our side, the way you gain credibility is by saying our credibility isn't built on winning the military battle. It's won in changing the hearts and minds of people, so we're going to prioritize that over another. Why will this affect the West's reaction to us more? We think we've seen it happen in the US or Europe today. The fear of uncertainty means that there's an increased polarization amongst themselves, right? Where they target each other for potentially harboring criminals, they're unsure of what they stand for, they distrust one another. The violence and hatred towards minorities or unclear communities within their own space means that in the West, they become more splintered and more divisive amongst themselves for what they stand for because they're unsure as to how to deal or respond to this threat. We think that that creates two possibilities. One is that it increases your ability to radicalize and recruit by alienating minorities in these communities. You tell the minorities that are oppressed in the West, look, these guys are attacking you, these guys are trying to oppress you because they are scared of you, because they are unsure of the kinds of things that you can do to them. We think if you want to increase your recruitment and your ability to reach out to more people to radicalize, you do that better by creating uncertainty and fear in these Western communities, where you tell them there is no telling when your next attack towards you is going to be. It could be your neighbor that attacks you, it could be your best friend that attacks you. We think that kind of insidious fear created amongst the people in the West is what creates the largest amount of impact and the largest amount of harm when you destroy their ability to be able to trust anyone in their community and to splinter or divide them. But secondly and more importantly, we think it decreases the ability for your opponents to solidify a group response or coalition because of two things. One, you create a local politics or divisiveness limits government's ability to put resources or create policies into the fight to challenge you even more, right? The more divisive they become locally, the less likely it is they can put government resources into fighting you. But two, it becomes much harder to fight you anyway, right? Because just any old hard military response isn't going to be enough to take you down. On that side, if the US really got really angry at you, they could bomb the shit out of you and you are done. We think on our side, you don't have the ability to have just a hard military battle, which makes it harder for the West to target you. It makes it harder for the West to have a response against you because you have no physical location to tie yourself to. That means their strategies and their tactics change, and it makes it much harder for them to fight the battle against you. That's the way you gain credibility, that's the way you grow your bases, and that's the way you ensure that your cause is tied to a much greater, more ambitious end goal than just one village.
No, I think it's fine. I think the analogizing it to be trivial. But I think the outcomes that you're getting is fine.
Always find something.
Extra prep time.
Yeah, additional prep time to learn.
Alright, and we're back. Thank you very much, Deputy Prime Minister. Can we please have the Deputy Leader of Opposition? Here.
Thanks to the opening government, this debate is in dire need of clarity, so I'm going to provide it for you. First, context. What are the motivations of terror groups? Sure, this is a hypothetical debate in which the parameters of what this particular terror group wants are not specified, but until you tell me something, I'm going to assume that I'm going to analyze past and present terrorist organizations and try to analyze, based on trends, what they are likely to want. I grant that there might be a minority of terrorist organizations that don't want territorial gains as a means or as an ends of achieving their objectives, but most of them involve independence or separatist groups which want to establish a local or a global Islamic caliphate, so on and so forth. So really, I'll just list them all for you, okay? The LTTE, the IRA, the FARC, the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, so on and so forth. So I think a lot of Joel's speech was irrelevant as a result. Secondly, what is the context of power? The debate assumes that you have enough power to choose one of two strategies. The one that allows you to hold territory is riskier, but presumably would have greater benefits. And one which is less risky, but at the same time, I'll show you later, will also be less effective. The trade-off, therefore, is whether you ought to hold territories as one of several measures in your toolbox, or whether you shouldn't hold, right? It is similar to, but not entirely the same as what Shermi's POI suggests. She paints it as a binary trade-off between holding or extorting, whether to conduct random attacks or whether to hold territory. ISIS obviously has a dual strategy. Hezbollah has had a dual strategy. Hamas has had a dual strategy. So the question is whether you want to simply extort in both sides of the house or whether you want to hold territory as well. So now that we've established what the debate is about, we'll debate with CG. Sorry guys. Firstly, rebuttal. They claim that we can flush you out. They claim that it is much harder or that it is almost impossible for a decentralized organization to be defeated by normal government forces as opposed to if you hold territory. I think the reverse is true. So I'll show you the myriad number of ways in which decentralized networks can be flushed out. For example, if you were to talk about Jama'ah Islamiyah, regardless of the fact that they don't try to hold territory and merely concentrated on conducting mass terror attacks in Bali, in Singapore, and elsewhere, we were eventually able to sniff out their hideout and kill their main leaders. The reason for this is because, given the fact that you deliberately choose not to hold territory in rural parts of, say, like Indonesia or Malaysia or the Philippines, given the fact that you therefore have fewer resources in terms of extorting the local population, having less tax revenue, contrary to what Justin tells you, like the reality therefore is you're going to have fewer resources with which to have fail-safes in case like your main hideout gets blown up, or to ensure that you can do more damage to the government in order to bring them to the negotiating table. So they have yet to name a single example where there was a successful terror campaign to bring the government to a negotiating table and therefore to achieve their objectives. And on average, this strategy does not work out for other reasons as well. One, because people are generally resilient. The recent reactions to the terror attacks in France and in Germany, for example, suggest that even though there is a bit of Islamophobia as a result, most people are not faced by the terror attack. They are determined to, in the British parlance, keep calm and carry on. And given the fact that they are often developed societies with robust means of ensuring that they compensate victims, rebuild infrastructure, and so on, it is very unlikely that you'll force these countries to the negotiating table. Furthermore, you can simply get rid of lone wolf terror cells by inserting intelligence agents in order to infiltrate these groups, simply monitoring through mass surveillance many individuals who might be suspected of terror attacks. So clearly, all of these measures either fail, or even if the occasional terror attack succeeds, it is not sufficient to bring these countries to the negotiating table. The worst problem is that who the hell do you negotiate with? If it's a decentralized network, who the hell do you extort? Which is it? The lone wolf attack in California? The lone wolf terrorists in New York? Who is their leadership? Who can you negotiate with? What concrete demands can you ask out of them? Because there is no one to coordinate the actual practical policy objectives that you want. Okay, and let's assume that all of that was false, okay? These terror attacks are actually successful. How do you translate from successful terror attacks which impose lots of fear into the hearts of the population to somehow you will achieve your long-term objective of gaining territory or creating some sort of Islamic caliphate, right? Even if it's a purely ideological caliphate, I mean, firstly, you're going to have to convince millions of people to A, literally convert to Islam or believe in your cause, and then B, to seize the organs of power in order to create the state or the final objective that you want. I don't see a link. There is nothing, absolutely nothing. This is Mangalam magic. I have no idea how the fuck this works. All right, great. No, thank you. So now to a defense of the arguments that Justin brought forth to you, right? Viha's one main contention was that terrorist organizations like ISIS lack credibility. Firstly, what the fuck is credibility, right? The reality, and I'm going to tell you now because Justin has already told you. The credibility is not credibility in the eyes of you, me, or Mubarak Wasi, right? Now, obviously, we think ISIS is irrelevant. They're uncredible. But to the eyes of the many disenfranchised second-generation immigrants in France or in Germany, or those people who become prospective recruits for ISIS, they are more credible than your Kuching Kurap Chapalang terrorist organization or a cell group in the middle of nowhere because they have results. I don't care if you fail to establish a startup. The fact that you tried and you got halfway means you're automatically more credible than the millions of people who just dream of setting something up and don't actually achieve anything. That is why, in the eyes of these disenfranchised individuals, ISIS has more credibility. And it's not just ISIS, it's Taliban, who controls half of Afghanistan, including Kandahar province, Hamas, who still controls the Gaza Strip despite every effort by Israel to turf them out, because they realize that by allying Hamas with the local population, if they dare to try to invade like the Gaza Strip to kick Hamas out, there will be an international outcry. That is the stuff that Justin already talked to you about, and that was not adequately rebutted by opening government as a result. Worst case scenario, even if we assume that there is a real possibility that our policy will fail and that their policy will succeed in creating lots of irritation and fear among the population, why should you go for the riskier option? There are three factors, right? The first of which is limited time, right? Like these grievances do not last forever. The idea is like it is your generation which is suffering the grievances, and as a result, like you want to be able to achieve these like outcomes within your particular lifetime. Secondly, you're competing for attention with other terrorist organizations. You're competing for manpower and resources, funding from Iran or Saudi Arabia. And if you don't show results that are more concrete than just simply blowing up a building, they're not going to fund you. Last but not least, the idea that states are not static. Do you think that the United States and the United Kingdom and France and Germany will continue to remain weak forever? Or even Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia? States' intelligence agencies and internal security agencies strengthen over time. They build barriers to prevent, trucks ramming into people in a crowded intersection. They implement all sorts of mitigatory measures to weaken the offensive of a terror attack in the wake of these terror attacks. So quite clearly, in order for you to outpace these governments and bring them to the negotiating table or simply outright control territory, you're going to have to act faster than them, and that is why the riskier option, even if it is risky, is the more worthwhile one. Vote opening up.
Thank you very much, Deputy Leader of Opposition. To kickstart the closing debate, I invite the Member of Government. Right here.
Hello? For all the times my mom told me playing COD, Call of Duty, or Counter-Strike would not be beneficial, this is for you, Mom. Because I know a lot more about military strategies now. And that is what was vaguely missing from the opening government. They vaguely asserted to you that it's unstrategic and harmful without telling you necessarily why. We will do that. But I think something needs to be understood here. The goal of the terrorist organizations aren't to be the founders of the territories. The goals are to gain control over these territories, and even if you aren't the vanguards of these territories, as long as you can gain control, that is a benefit. Where have we seen this? Ahmadinejad, the reason he became the supreme leader of Iran was not because he fought during the Iran Revolution. He was hiding somewhere else. It was during the power vacuum post-Iran Revolution that he comes in and grabs power. And that is oftentimes the most strategic ways in which you stay in power. What does the OG do? Number one, they vaguely state why battle is bad, simplistic, and there's no terms of links in terms of military strategy. Secondly, what we will do give them credit for is oftentimes because people are afraid that you could be living with a terrorist. Oftentimes this breeds some level of fear amongst minorities, and they oftentimes become terrorists. We don't think this is the bulk of the debate. What are our extensions? Number one, why militarily you will fail? Number two, why oftentimes holding territories means you have a responsibility to individuals within these areas, and the second in which you fail the individuals within these areas, you are less popular. And thirdly, how is defeat truly measured in a comparative between both worlds? But before moving on, a few levels of rebuttals. Number one, you know what's funny about the OO? They were able to list out terrorist organizations that have all failed. Hezbollah, Hamas, ISIS have all dwindled. But what are the terrorist organizations that were able to succeed, and how in which they were able to do it, right? The FARC rebels, the IRS. Why were they able to do this? Number one, they never held land masses. They continued sporadic attacks because they knew holding land mass would be bad. But secondly, they forced governments to come give in to them. That's why the IRS is a political party in Ireland, and the FARC rebels right now are getting paid huge amounts of money to return from the random jungles that they're in because their attacks are unnoticeable. So we don't think that every terrorist organization that is successful established a state. Secondly, oftentimes they said that you can gain economic resources. This is contingent on this land being rich. It is very hard for you to gain control over rich lands because those are the ones that will be heavily protected by the state actors. We think the amount of money, time, and effort, and the body bags that you would have to sustain to gain the riches of these areas are deeply ineffective to begin with. Thirdly, like terrorist organizations are going to be very bad governing actors, and this will be continued in my argumentation. But why? Because they oftentimes undergo constant strike. Number two, oftentimes it's very easy to cut off like trucks to your area, so people moving into your area to give you support, right? Obviously, you cannot grow crops within these areas, so people have to send it to you in trucks. It's much easier to just set up blockades to ensure that these things never really happen. Thirdly, oftentimes there'll be internal politics within these areas. What's the best method of self-defense? When should we move? When should we leave? These sort of splinterings only happen when you have large land masses and different individuals have different interests within your land masses. We think that is heavily problematic. What is the trade-off in this debate? We would concede that we will limit it, like with a very limited attempt in gaining land mass. But what does that mean? The amount of money, time, strategy that we have in return could be used to buy guns, bombs, and other mechanisms that are far more successful. Firstly, why would you oftentimes fail militarily? 7 key arguments. Firstly, oftentimes you have to face the local governments and the local people within these areas, and this is extremely difficult. Secondly, you oftentimes end up killing people who aren't your enemies. Hamas and ISIS, the reason why they're not deeply popular is because they had to kill Iraqi and Syrians who are also Muslim. And Hamas had to kill various number of Jewish individuals when taking over the area, which means that you're less popular even to your own people. Obviously, a terrorist organization is not going to set up in Manhattan or London, right? So obviously, they have to pick areas closest to them and kill off their brethren there. This makes them unpleasant. Thirdly, the nature of the land that you're able to take over are oftentimes level pieces of land. Why is this important for you to note? These are the lands that are easiest to drone strike. This is a comparative here. The reason why the US lost the Vietnam War is not because they didn't have enough money. It's because the mountainous and forest-like terrain of Vietnam, which are oftentimes the only areas in which you cannot drone strike, right? That means for you to take over land, or oftentimes means that the lands that you can take over leaves you to be sitting ducks. But comparatively, when you do try to take up strategic lands, the local governments within those areas who have a lot more knowledge on local terrains can easily defeat you, hence it's unstrategic. That is why, this is the conclusion and the main reason why you are more likely susceptible to drone strikes, because the areas in which you take over are the most susceptible to drone strikes, and you cannot take over the lands that are able to protect you from these drone strikes, right? Thirdly, oftentimes this is an unnecessary flex of strength, right? What does this mean? That means even in your best case, right, you continue to grow in terms of land mass, this is when other state actors are heavily incentivized to attack you, right? This means that there's a growing fear that you are growing, and this means more countries get involved in the toppling down of your place. Comparatively, if there is no, and this is taking them at their best case, no growth in terms of land mass, and there's no objective metric of your terms of success, this is when less states are incentivized to put in huge amounts of their budget in fighting your battle. Those are the military strategies in which terrorist organizations often have to trade off, and that is why it's incredibly difficult for you to succeed within these scenarios. Secondly, I will take opening.
Yeah. So I think we've both established that either strategy has a high failure rate. 9 out of every 10 terror plots get stopped. 9 out of every 10 attempts to control a village get stopped. What is comparatively worse on our side as opposed to yours? You've not made the concrete comparison.
Because you lose. You lose your land mass, you lose as an organization, no one cares about you anymore. At the very least, on our side, and the sort of arguments that we say is yes, 9 out of 10, it will get stopped. But this is where my third extension comes in. When are you truly defeated is something that you are able to quantify. That means if ISIS is no longer in Raqqa, and if the forces were able to take back Raqqa, you are substantially defeated, right? Why are terrorist organizations very bad in being the forces in which controls these areas? 2 key premises. Number 1, you become beholden to people. The people within your area that trusted you and came to these places, if they start getting screwed over, that's when oftentimes they become defectors in terms of some level of protection, right? This is problematic. And I told you earlier why you're, as a terrorist organization, sometimes you're the worst actors in which once you gain territory, you have the least amount of ambient protection and ability to ensure that the people within these areas are well protected. And this is heavily harmful, especially when you could have defectors or individuals fighting in a power vacuum, or like individuals thinking that you aren't able to continue this and they think that they can do it better, right? That's heavily problematic. But lastly, what is the last extension from CG? When are you truly defeated? We didn't know when the FARC was truly defeated, but they wouldn't, right? What we were able to do is just give them a deal. Same with the IRS. But let's talk about Hezbollah, let's talk about Hamas, let's talk about other terrorist organizations that actively went in search of land masses. The second in which the areas that they controlled were taken over by state actors, they've been substantially defeated. That is a narrative that Western states will push onto individuals, and that means that there is no incentive for you to join them. Those are things that you can quantify and you allow Western states to do. At least on our side, it remains ambiguous if you're strong or you're weak. For all those reasons, proud to propose.
in between every speech, yeah?
They give us a lot of
No, but still it's premised on the, at the end of the day, you're landlocked. And you
But that's all it is, right? Everything you need to is obviously an explanation of having set up an company. You have to prove that what you do is worth more than the having set up. Like just claiming that it's landlocked is not enough. All the things he said is what it has to be. To prove why the two steps so it's like completely the judge's decisions whether they see it as I'm just
Alright, and we're back. Thank you very much, member of government. Can you please have a member of opposition? Here. Here. On demon magic.
they managed to pull to everything that is confusing.
Let's start off by saying how I love Mitchell's damn calm and collected, even in the face of any fatal flaw in his speech. Let me tell you what's Mitchell's fatal flaw in his speech. Now, what is his fatal flaw? He only pointed out why having territories don't work, and now you why the converse is comparatively better at achieving why only doing attacks better achieving your goal, having some global control over policies of other states, which is generally what he characterized the rise of terrorist organizations to be. Now, I'm gonna deal with this largely in my speech, telling you why terrorists work, why terrorists are better at achieving the goals of terrorist organizations. But let's look in detail what CG brought, right? Firstly, they tell you can't get money because which areas are heavily protected. Now, in response to that, I'd say that's probably why you need better recruitment policies. That's probably why you need to recruit more people, and the easiest way for you to do that is by having a territory and then recruiting people from that territory, because they are largely homogeneous to your cause, the people in your cause anyway. It's easier. I'll explain that later. B, he talked about why you are susceptible to drones because it's an unstrategic location, right? And also talk about why having a territory with like civilians is often the best way to defend against indiscriminate drone strikes, because they are ethical. They're quite ethical countries. They don't want to kill other civilians, right? And then quantifying defeat. Then he used IRA as an example, which is weird, right? Because IRA's victory was in the creation of an Irish Republic, right? Which is literally like a territory, right? So that's victory for IRA, right? Let's look at OG also. Like, limited capital means you should trade off controlling territory and instead do lone wolf attacks on surprise bombings. Now, I don't understand this, right? Like, why is it that lone wolf attacks and having territory cannot go like hand in hand, which is the case with most terrorist organizations? Like, why is it that you can only choose one and not the other? Like, just do both lah. It's more effective. Why? Like, in fact, I think like it's probably better, right? When you have territories, you can have oil, you sell for money, and then you have money, you can buy bombs and everything. Then you can, like, it just makes it more effective when you are richer, like, you know, instead of, you know, having to, you know, make your lone wolves buy bombs, make like chemicals and all that kind of thing. It's just a lot less effective. Then, like, he tells you that you want to create fear and stuff. Like, I think fear is only a means to achieving your true aim, which is to create, like, political systems, right? Creating, like, maybe a caliphate, stuff like that, which Ozzy considered. And then he tells you, like, they tell you that it's easier to recruit minorities when you are destabilized. But I think, like, it's hard, like, it's easier to recruit minorities when you destabilize the region of USA and stuff like that. We tell it's harder, right, when there's increased surveillance, right, after attacks, like your mosque is literally like spied on and all after attacks, because like, and your deep web is also like spied on. We tell it's easier to recruit from people you rule. And then something about why it's harder to engage without physical location. We think, like, in this current age, that's like surveillance from the CIA, other agency, often means that your attempts at hiding are often futile, right? Like, they know where you are. Osama bin Laden was found after disappearing for a while. So it means the alternative is like having a state is better because it gives you leverage over other things. That's my attention. Sit down. I think, like, I agree with Mitrun largely in the sense that terrorist organizations often want to have some form of global influence over the political systems of other countries, and oftentimes they don't have to do it in person, like by proxies is fine also. But I don't think doing it through lone wolf attacks is very effective in doing that, because terrorist organizations never really gain political recognition and legitimacy from the global community, because violent attacks is diametrically opposed to a lot of political systems worldwide. So that means, what's the only alternative that you have? It means the only alternative you have in doing so is by the creation of your own state, your own territories in which you are able to implement this kind of political systems that you are fighting for. That means terrorist organization only employing guerrilla warfare, lone wolf attacks is never going to achieve its promises of a new order, a new political system, save for establishing territories because incumbents always have the backing of like another government, right, and stuff like that. That means. And secondly, the second level of analysis is to this, is that the world is generally looking inward, right? Like America is like pulling its troop and all, like they are just closing borders and everything, right? That means it's harder for you to put in your people to do lone wolf attacks anyway. And like and that means it's easier to expand or to hold on to your own territories at a point in time where USA is going towards the trend of having less military interventions anyway. Secondly, I'm going to talk to you about why it's important to have human resources, right? Now, this is where we really deviate from, they talk about money and stuff like that, why you can drill oil and stuff like that. But we think like the most important thing in having a territory is in the form of human resources, where it's easy for you to recruit people from your own territory itself. Why is this so? Because often territories they control where their base is, right? Where it's homogeneous within the people who run the show, right? So like the recruitment is easier because they relate to you and they often share the same views. I'll take Viha.
If you're winning or losing territory based on a daily basis of military battles at your border, how do you gain any benefit from a territory that's not consistent and constant for a longer period of time?
Yeah.
Like having a constant territory is not really important, in the sense that you will still always have that territory, you will still always have people fighting for it, and you will still be able to have that core in being able to protect the core of your political activities. And oftentimes money buys you favors and protection, right? I proved to you why human resources is important. Like you sell shit to China and all, you give them rights to drill oil, then like they probably want to protect their interest in drilling the oil in your area anyway. Then I'll talk about leverage. Why it's important to have leverage, right? Because states and territories are often the line separating life and death of your movement, right? Because military intervention become less effective against you when they need to take into account innocent civilians, when they need to take into account collateral damage that's inflicted upon these territories. That means the US or a coalition of governments are less likely to indiscriminately bomb the fuck out of you using drones, as CG said, at a point in which you have a territory with other civilians, right? Because they want to be ethical, they want to seen as be fighting a just war and all like that. That means the more likely form of intervention is through the form of infantry, ground troops, that's easier for you to handle because they inflict less damage. You are able to take them out from your bases anyway. That means you are able to survive in the age of surveillance and all that. This is the best way for a terrorist organization.
Thank you very much, member of opposition. Can we please have the government whip? Here.
I think Adil's speech was the most relevant one in the opposition bench because he was the only one on that bench who actually contended with what the real goals of a terrorist organization are. But as usual, his conclusions that he draws from these premises are wrong. What exactly do we want as a terrorist organization? But firstly, let's make an important clarification. A terrorist organization does not include or automatically include everyone who believes in your ideology. They include a specific group of individuals who use or believe that the spreading of terror and the use of violence is a legitimate form through which their ideology can be spread. Which is to say that the achievement of your political goals does not necessarily have to come from the terrorist organization alone, but rather can come from external sources as well, whom we will argue are much better administrators and much better at achieving those causes than the terrorist organization, something Mithun already told you. But let's firstly be clear about what those goals necessarily are. Because I think the first thing that they didn't want to acknowledge is that it's not always about a long-term aim. To the extent to which these long-term aims may sometimes seem to be quite far off in the horizon, I think terrorist organizations gain a huge amount of utility from simply spreading terror and making sure that the lives of individuals that live a life that's antithetical to the ones that they believe in is hell. So to the extent to which that is true, I would argue that simply the inability to spread that terror is in and of itself bad for the terrorist organization. But the second thing that we need to note is that oftentimes they want to reshape the world in their image, which is to say that it doesn't have to be them that reshapes that specific world, but rather they enable through the spreading of that terror as well, the ability for other organizations or other governments to be coerced into following their specific principles the way that the world is like. So why then do we think that they are unlikely to be able, why the reasons that they've given as to why territory is important don't work? Recognize that in opening opposition, they were very short term in the way they thought. Because to the extent to which perhaps you might be able to have some sort of a caliphate and maybe create a mini world in which these laws or in the way that you want to practice them are true, we argue that it's not a sustainable model for the terrorist organization because you can't ensure the longevity of the kind of world that you wanted. We gave you a couple of reasons for it, which I will talk about in just a bit. But that point is that if they fail to be able to sustain that territory, then we think that's not a good enough outcome for a terrorist organization. The second thing that they told us is the reason why we need some limited time, which is what Adil said, was because your grievances may expire over the course of your generation. That's a reason for you to generally speaking, you have an ideology that's probably quite steadfast. You're willing to die for your cause. You don't necessarily need to see it happen in your lifetime because you're dead. You are part of the process. That's literally the point of a terrorist organization. Secondly, you say you need competition from funding from Iraq. Seriously, they want to fund you because they hate the West. They'll continue to fund you. They'll fund everybody. It's great. That's the way that it works. Now, why exactly do we think this is problematic? Firstly, right, we think that you are likely to create you're a bad administrator for a few reasons. One, you will be targeted, which means that your land becomes the center point and focus of international efforts, for example, to destroy you. I think Mithrun specifically gave you analysis about why the kind of land that terrorist organizations are able to control are oftentimes lands that are the most easy to bomb as well, because their ability to use their ramshackle forces to be able to take over large plains of land means that these are the same kinds of land that's easily targeted by things like drone strikes and the like, which are also the kind of military strategy that's very easily achieved because you don't need to send troops and forces and sacrifice human life. You can just bomb these pieces of land. The second and third reason why is just because you have no resources. You argue that somehow you can sell oil, you can have more resources, etc. I would argue that to the extent to which you continually fight a war, it's very hard for you to gain resources from that land. The third reason why is because you just are absolutely a group of people who just have a particular ideology that you're coming together with, but you have no actual political experience or plan as to how exactly you're going to run that piece of territory, which means that rather than, as Wesley suggests, you are able to recruit from the area, you end up, as Mithun told you, alienating the people within the area precisely because you show that you are a terrible actor in terms of being able to give them a better life. We think that that state is doomed to fail. But what then and why then do we think there's a much better strategy towards victory? Recognizing that spreading terror is the main goal of a terrorist organization, because by doing this, you can achieve a number of potential outcomes. One, you could spread terror such that states are afraid or deterred from doing things that are antithetical to the things that you believe in. You could potentially inspire individuals who may not agree with your violent tendencies, but do see your image of invulnerability as an important, as something that they aspire to, and something that are your principles, and something that they potentially want to adopt themselves. So they might create, for example, like in the way that IRS was able to create Ireland, a separate moderate political wing that's able to actually fight for the causes that you wanted to believe in. To the extent to which we argue that the terror, that what they are doing hurts the ability for you to spread that terror and therefore achieve those long-term aims, we think that's in the interest of these people. Yeah.
Why is it that bombing New York makes it easier for the United States to create Sharia law?
Yeah, so I'm just about to come into this. So what Wesley told us was that lone wolf attacks, like this form of terror, is not useful for you to be able to achieve the kind of outcomes that you want. But the point of the matter here is that it is not just about the lone wolf attacks as being isolated instances of which this happens, but rather also recognizing that the spreading of that terror itself, insofar as people are afraid that terrorist organizations are going to bomb them, look at airport security that's increased since then, for example, are all instances in which it is successes for the terrorist organization as a whole. But also that specific image of invulnerability is what inspires individuals to believe that perhaps you are ordained by God, or perhaps they don't want you to continue bombing them for your independence movement and etc. That forces people to either subscribe to your ideology or to do other things in order to not piss you off. And also this thing about hiding in villages, we think we do that better on our side because you're not in one location, you are literally spread out among many civilian villages as a whole. So to the extent to which we think that what they did does hurt that particular terror, we think that that's better for the terrorist organizations. Some other reasons that they gave us as to why it is now better able to spread terror on their side of the house. They said that you are now more able to gain some sort of economic advantage. You are now able to hold that territory and be seen as more legitimate. But we argued to you, and I'm gonna extend our analysis what Mitri did. That came out in opening government, that the idea here is that your power comes from, one, the image of invulnerability, and secondly, from your legitimacy as a ideology and an idea that cannot be quantified in terms of land mass. To the extent to which you now tie yourself to the idea of being a political actor, which is to say someone that might eventually come into power, you lose the support and credibility and legitimacy that you would otherwise have had, because now you are oftentimes more likely to fail than not, and you fail in your ability, therefore, to be able to create a sustainable model that seems to be attractive for people to join you and for you to be more effective. We argued to you that the positive model that we want as a terrorist organization is actually just sustainability. To the extent to which we are now able to continually spread terror because, like Mitrin told you, we have more resources, we are more decentralized, you are not able to take out all of us at once, for example, are all very good reasons as to why we think that the control of territory might have been a misguided objective for people for a long time, but should no longer be anymore.
I invite the opposition whip. Right here.
Christopher Columbus was a successful terrorist. The French were successful terrorists. The Spanish were successful terrorists. Perhaps the most successful terrorists of them all were the British. And they all tried to conquer land, because convincing the people of that land to follow their native laws wasn't strong enough. They had to impose themselves on that land in order to create the structures of democracy, of capitalism, or whatever else they wanted. Government in this debate failed in trying to tell us why, as a result of creating lone wolf attacks with very limited money that they have, they will force political changes in governments. The best I got was beefed up airport security, and I don't think that does much. Now, in my speech, I'll answer first. Why can you defend this new territory that you have conquered? Secondly, why does this mean that you can achieve the political aims later? Now, we differ slightly from opening opposition in the sense that they think that terrorist organizations all want to control their own caliphate. It's not necessarily true. I mean, God tells you to create an Islamic caliphate, not necessarily that you should govern that Islamic caliphate. So the debate's about whether or not we force foreign governments to do it and current governments to do it, or whether or not we do it ourselves, right? So first, why can you do it, right? We told you 3 things that wasn't responded to in Shamai's speech. The first is that as a political organization, which you are not, a terrorist, because they use violence in order to achieve their ends, are unlikely to be negotiated with by governments. So, if you want to form a political representation and want to form, create your demands in these political systems, they are unlikely to negotiate with you, right? So oftentimes, given that they meet this barrier, the best thing that they can do is at least create their own government where at least some form of Islamic law or some form of Christian law exists within these areas, if that's what the Lord Resistance Army wants. Now, opening opposition tells you that you can use money to defend these areas. Now, the more important thing that we need to explain, and was explained in Wesley's speech, was why human resource is the best way to defend these areas. You need people to use that money in order to defend the oil fields in Raqqa, in order to rob the banks in Iraq, in order to gain the money that you need, in order to buy the bombs, in order to buy the ability to send your lone wolves to the United States, and in order to get all these achievements that you want, if you think that this leads to your political ends. What also wasn't responded to is the amount of leverage we have as a result of having our own borders where we can hold people hostage and use them as literal human shields from drone strikes, from general bombing, which is why America's general policy has never been to send troops or send planes anymore, right? It's to invade or fund foreign militaries to do these things. And we think that that's the best kind of deterrence we have. That's why you don't need drone strikes anymore. Now, the opening government argued that you can currently, if you maintain your own land, you generate profit in a very contrived way because you have to spend it on women and children. Like, why do you think they don't already kill those women and children, right? Because they are assets to that particular area. As a result of having women and children in that area, you are less likely to get bombed because you have your own territory. As a result of having more people in that area that you can educate, that you can propagandize to in order to recruit them into your terrorist organization, you get to defend your oil fields, you get to send people as suicide bombers, you get to create the culture of terrorism that you want in order to spread around the world. Like, if you want, like, the kind of division and, like, breaking down in foreign governments and that uncertainty and fear, we think the money to be able to do those things exists, like, far better, right? Then they asked us, like, well, wouldn't ISIS, in closing government, like, ISIS isn't very popular because they kill Iraqis. No, they don't. Only if they're a liability, right? So the vast majority of them are easily recruited. But if you argue that we are alienating the people in the area and that creates resistance, no, we don't. We kill them. We kill the resistance, right? That's the best way you create the terrorist organization. But on a net, you end up with more people than if you were operating from underground in a jungle somewhere where you don't have access to the same amount of money and the same sort of human resource and capital. The only reason why ISIS managed to do this for 2 years is because they had access to all these things, right? And like, in terms of airport security being beefed up as a victory, we think we can get more airports beefed up as a victory if we have more money to do those things to begin with. Yeah.
Right. Look, this idea that somehow you're now better able to defend yourself because you're able to hide inside the villages among civilians, don't you think it's far more likely that you'll be able to save yourself if you're decentralized and literally spread out among these civilian villages and are not seen to be a territory that can be legitimately bombed by foreign government?
No. So this is why Wesley says you can't really hide anymore in the 21st century, right? If we accept that surveillance technology goes up, but also people can hide better maybe because they can use proxy servers or whatever nonsense, the team that has more money to beef up one particular strategy that they have is going to win. So surveillance, given that has extreme amounts of funding from the United States government, has extreme funding from foreign governments, means they will outpower your ability to hide as a government, right? Or as a terrorist organization. This is why you have to go on the offense and try to capture territory instead and use the capital in that territory to do even worse things to these areas. The next thing to talk about is in terms of like this argument on physical locations, right? Because they tie you down to these places, therefore it's very difficult. Like, in comparison, like where you're gonna hide, where you gonna hide that would like unlikely be found in a world where we have increased surveillance, increased military capacity. I think that it's far more difficult at the point in which you don't have the ability to hide yourself in any particular area, right? So I think it's better that you take the comparative where you get the money. So like things like ISIS using the deep web to recruit people, for example, being able to have access to all the recording technology, the media, editing, and all these things only come when they have the ability to invest in those things, right? That's why they massively improved their recruitment from all around the world, because people had a place to land in, people had a place to go, people had money to be viewing these things to begin with, they were paid for, and all these things only happens, no thank you, when you have money, right? So they don't tell us how these individuals, in a world where they are being out-resourced, will have the access to these things. In addition to that, we told you why countries are right now looking inward, right? So the United States have an inward-looking policy. A lot of political right movements are creating countries where they have to prioritize their own citizens. What does this look like? This means that it's becoming harder and harder to enter foreign lands and fly a plane into a building, but it's becoming easier to create your own territory because people aren't giving a shit anymore of what's happening in Uganda, what's happening in the Middle East, and they want to protect their own people, right? You have less funding from these individuals. And I think that means that people, the land is there for the taking. I think that we should take it and capitalize on those systems that exist. In the worst case scenario, if we can only manage to keep it for 2 years like ISIS did, this is 2 years of the Islamic Caliphate in Iraq that will never exist on their side. I have lived in the government of my dreams for some significant portion of time, as opposed to no time spent creating change in foreign governments, right? That is why we comparatively win this debate in closing opposition.
Thank you very much, all speakers, for their speeches. You can drop the floor, shake hands, and sit tight. The result will be out in a bit. Thank you.
I thought the need to